had four, and because I'd had four and I'd taken all of their names, then I'm with the current husband, who I've actually been with the name. I thought, for goodness sake, this is getting a bit silly. Very young, in that it was, I was 16, my sister was 14, she was only 50, but she died so well. She lived, and she taught us about you were going to die, and therefore I've always thought we have to live.
Hello, welcome to the Reinventors podcast. And I am delighted in this episode to have a very good friend of mine, a woman who helped me transform my running many years ago, as well as many other things, Julia Kai-Taylor. And Julia is someone who has, in the running terms, been running for 60 years. She's a former international athlete. She's run a 2:36 marathon and loads of other amazing times, not just at her peak, but continued to as she's gone into each decade. She's also been working with people for 50 years in various contexts, from personal trainer to a therapist to a life strategist, which is kind of where she is now, and help transform and change millions of, well, maybe not millions, but a lot of people's lives. It might be millions, because she's also reached out through social media and her own channels. So that's a broad description of you, Ju, and feel free to add anything you would like.
Well, thank you, Fee. Thank you for having me. I love it, and lovely to see you.
Yeah,
absolutely fabulous. And we were talking about my name, because the name Julia Kai-Taylor, I've had a few husbands. I think that's a reinvention.
That is a reinvention. That is, and it's a lovely reinvention. You've reinvented brilliantly with husbands.
So it is a reinvention, because I've had four, and because I'd had four and I'd taken all of their names, then I'm with the current husband, who I've actually been with nearly 12 years.
Wow.
Oh no, 14 years. Been with him 14 years, about to have our 12th wedding anniversary. Yeah. I took him on as a husband, number 5, and wasn't going to change my name. I thought, for goodness sake, this is getting a bit silly. I'm going to keep my maiden name, Julia Armstrong. I'll go full circle back to Julia Armstrong. Anyway, then it seemed a bit mean to have taken the other 4. Yeah. So then I thought, right, I'll take the Taylor, but I want something of my own in there. And we happened to be in St. Lucia. We got married in St. Lucia. And there was this wonderful guy, Malachi, and he would sell jewellery. He'd been working with the tourists, he said, since he was 14. He'd take them in boats on the sea. Nice. He sold lots of jewellery to them. And he also seemed to live on rum and cannabis, although he did assure me that he used to run 7 miles every day. I'm not sure where that happened or at what stage in his life. But anyway, and I loved Malachi. And I said to my husband, Anadi, I'd like to be Julia Malachi Taylor. And he said, well, I like Malachi, that's great, but why not Kai? And that was how the Kai was born. Although a lot of people, because my work in people's lives is a lot to do with energy and, our energy and our vibration and all of that, people often think it's chi. So yeah. I answered chi.
Yes, well, I thought, I knew it wasn't chi, but I kind of, in my head, I was thinking of energy. So there you go. But, and also we were talking about reinvention, and at first, when we talked about doing a podcast, you said, well, I'm not sure it's me, because I've always reinvented. And then you just said to me before we started about share.
When you first asked me about reinventing, I kind of thought I'd never reinvented myself. Yeah. I thought I'd always just done the same things, because I've always been running for my entire life, and I've been working with people my entire life. And I have essentially loved conversation, loved drinking coffee, loved my work, loved running. And I said to you that maybe I wasn't a guest for your podcast because I was doing the same thing. Okay. So I thought, well, I'm not a reinventor. And then I heard Cher talking about how she reinvents all the time. Yes. And that she was actually answering a criticism from somebody who had been, I'm not sure what they were criticising her about, but what I did enjoy was Cher's response. and that basically the person who criticised her was about half her age, I think.
Yeah.
And she was saying, you know, I've been reinventing myself from kind of before you were born, and here I am. And I thought, oh, that's what reinventing is. So then I said to you, I think perhaps I do reinvent myself. And particularly when we started, funnily enough, talking about my history with men, obviously that itself has been you know, every relationship's been a different life and a different evolution and a different learning in each relationship. And I've emerged different and grown and changed in good ways from all of those relationships.
Yeah, and I think because what our company name is Live to Reinvent, and that kind of means it lives to always be open to change. And I think potentially you maybe haven't thought you've reinvented. You are always open to change, and it's a natural state for you to be open to the world and to what is happening. But for a lot of people, they can feel stuck, whether that's through they can reach a certain age and they think that's it, or they kind of get to a point where maybe they're just tired out. How would you help them from your experience of being able to be open and change?
I think so much of life, strangely, is people get, not even knowing it, they get very identified with all the conditioning that is obviously family, but it can be societal, cultural, and of course even more now I see it, people are more exposed to what there's expected of them at certain times because of social media and things. And as I say, I can see its positives, but I can also see that puts people into cycles of we're meant to be doing this at certain ages. And I've never had that. I've never ever really, I've loved every decade, that every decade has been a different life for me, and I've really enjoyed them all, and I've celebrated every decade enthusiastically. I'm already looking forward to being 70. I mean, I've got 3 years to go. I kind of feel like I've always got a sort of 10-year plan. I love James Dean's quote of dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die today. So I've always been aware that I could die at any moment, and I think that it was a privilege really having a mother die very young, in that it was I was 16, my sister was 14, she was only 50, but she died so well. She lived, and she taught us about living all the way through her illness, all the way to her death. And even though it was obviously a difficult thing, we knew that about living. And my sister and I both say we think we are different people because of that, and better people because of that. So from very young, I knew we're going to die. And therefore, I've always thought we have to live. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have loads of things to work out and lots of struggles and all the things. But I always knew that there was a way to be free of the struggles, be free of the issues. And so because I freed myself from my own struggles and I could always see the light, I was always people just came to me. I didn't exactly plan to be a coach, but people came to me to help for me to help them out of their struggles, really. So I think there's always a way to work anything out. And I always think that even, difficult things, we can properly grow and live through them. And I feel that essentially life's for living, and that it's our responsibility to heal all the stuff that limits the trauma, the stuff that has gone on in our life. We're the ones that are responsible for healing that. And that can take work. And obviously I've helped people with that, but that ultimately then we are aware that we can keep living without dragging that old stuff with us all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask actually about like the sort of practical day-to-day way to be in the mindset of believing you can make a change, and just making small steps to making a change. If you feel you want to, say you feel you've got a big thing you need to do, but you don't know where to start and you're stuck and you're lacking belief, what would you recommend day to day?
Well, I think first of all, it's self-awareness. So I think first of all, it's really important that people recognize if they're in any patterns or they're stuck or they're in a cycle of negative self-talk. I mean, they're all looped together, to be quite honest, because the thoughts will create the feelings, create the psychological dramas that loop round, where people then will see a pattern. And then, of course, we're seeing the world as we are, thinking you're seeing it as it is, but you'll see that so and so doesn't support you, this doesn't working. But I think the first step is to press pause and have a look at what's going on in your internal narrative, what's going on in your emotional setup, how you're feeling, and then also recognizing patterns that are playing out both in your relationships and your endeavors. So, because then you'll start to be able to see where you need help. Because I think that often we just need some help. We can have that in the form of, doesn't even have to be hugely expensive hours and hours of therapy or PTing or training, but you could go and see a coach about if it's physical.
I think hours of PT is quite a good idea. Just saying, online coaching particularly is very good for this kind of movement forward.
But I do think going to look for a coach is so useful, because they can, again, help you identify the patterns and help you see and give you ideas of where to stretch out of an adaptation or a pattern. And of course, it then takes a commitment, because I think people get very habitual in their kind of thinking and very habitual in their negative loops. And it takes a commitment. I had a voice note just before we started with someone who's on a masterclass with me. I have different ways of working. Masterclass means they have availability more often. And she just said, I'm reporting in because I've done really well in the masterclass, because she'd responded to a whole set of difficulties that morning with a completely different mindset to how she had previously. And I always say, as humans, we change our lives by changing our attitude. But of course, often the responses are coming from deep down old patterns of struggle from childhood. So I do think it's often very useful, again, not hours of therapy necessarily. Once you find out where your wounds are, your hurts are, you can see where they're playing out currently, and you can start to make the shifts. So that was very whiz through.
No, it's really interesting, because and also just to say, I think I'd like to talk about mindset, as you said, is at the core of making a change. And all the things that you've talked about, recognizing your responsibility for having the right mindset to even tackle childhood trauma or whatever it might, is all part of that. But I'm going to bring it back to your physical exploits, your endurance life, and just sort of because when I describe you to people, I often say Julia went barefoot for a number of years, and she walked from the north to the south of Spain in her bare feet. Now that is huge. And then let's see your feet. Yeah, are they? I can't. Oh, there. It popped.
There's a foot.
Yay, there it is. You're still barefoot. And I just think how you live, how you do your training, how you constantly, because I always see you as someone who's always growth mindset, always sees a solution. How much of that is linked to and reflected in what you do in endurance sport? And just tell us some of the stories from where your feet are taking you.
I think I've always been barefoot. I was born in West Africa, because my dad was an engineer and was building bridges and roads and things. And so the first 4 years of my life, I was bare, basically. I don't think I've even had a nappy on as long as very long. I was a naked child. There's lots of naked child pictures. Well, not many, because it's that era, but there's a few. And so came back to the UK and was traumatised by snow in 1963, and have never liked snow since. But that's another.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I've never liked snow since. I can get into other people's worlds who like snow. So then I was barefoot anyway as a child, and I used to run barefoot everywhere. But then I wanted to run fast, and that was my own desire. So I used to get my dad to take me to the playing fields when I was 8, because by then I was wanting to win the running race at school and all of that. So I used to get him to take me to the playing fields on the grass and time me again and again and again. And so I had a natural desire to run. I think the resilience, I think I was born quite resilient. I do think there's quite a lot of, nature nurture, but I was the child. We've talked about this, Fee, that, and you're the same. When we did the swimming, learning to swim, and then you can get the badge, and there was the quarter mile, half mile badge. Then I saw the mile badge and was like, right. And I was the last child in the pool, and I think you were the same, weren't you?
Exactly.
You were the last. And so my mother and sister were sitting on the edge. All the other children had gone home. And I was up and down for those 64 lengths. So I think that was an
That's
innate.
inside.
I think that's an innate quality, or whatever we want to call it. It's just been in me. And, my father used to get up at 6 and do exercises every morning, and I'm the child that joined him. So I was there with him from, again, 6, 7, and still I'm the person up in the mornings. I like exercise. I like the feeling of it. I always used to think, when I had my own gym in the 80s, and I used to feel for people who felt they ought to exercise. So I used to find ways to make exercise fun because they didn't want to do it. Whereas I will be here. I mean, as I'm in Spain at the moment, you'll go by on the seafront, there's all those bars and people are doing everything on them. And I go, oh, I can do that. And that's still my being. So I think that's an innate thing. I think that for when I've been teaching other people to kind of get that mindset, I try to help them make it fun, because I think there's such a lot about it being a slog, whereas ultimately it's got to be, what you want to do. And otherwise it won't be sustainable. So any mindset shifts have to be sustainable. And I think really then as you know, I joined an all boys athletics club. That was a grass track. I ran barefoot. So barefoot has been, I use the super shoes as well now. I range, but I walk around barefoot, and I like keeping my hand with at least the Vibrams, just because I think it's good for my body. I wouldn't say it for everybody, by the way. I think then it became, I wanted to get better at running. So the fact I wanted to get better at running, I was saying to Anadi, actually, my husband, the other day, now I don't particularly like training in horrible weather. I remember you and I once, when we were training for a marathon, ran 11 days straight in pouring rain.
I remember that.
I just don't want to do that now. But then the choice I made was I chose to run marathons. I chose to run them as well as I could, which meant that there wasn't a choice, as far as I was concerned, not to do the training. So I think marrying in your mind the contradictions, because of course we've always got a choice, but once I'd set myself the goal, then I didn't have a choice not to do what I'd set. Although I learned there are times when you back off because you're tired or something, but that took a bit of learning.
I mean, for some people, like, they'll be thinking, oh, well, it was all right, she was born that way. I can't possibly relate to that. But I think what I would take from what you said is that make it fun. Make whatever you're doing, not just running or sport or trying to improve your physical self, but life in general, make it fun. And then the other thing you said, which is kind of separate from that, but it's about having that goal, I think. So having, you're dreaming in the 10 years, your goals, the longer term vision, without getting too hung up on it, I'm guessing.
Well, I think it's always good as humans. I think you're absolutely right. It was in me. But having said that, it still means I still, for 15 years, ran probably an average of 80 miles a week. I know people think kilometres now, so I can't do that in kilometres. But I have no idea. But a lot. And so I still, even though, yes, it was something and it was at a level natural for me, I developed that mindset and I ingrained it. And I think, and kept it as fun as possible. I think, yes, I think a goal is a really wonderful thing for us, because it means all the developments we get along the way can be incredible. All the things we learn about ourselves, all the skills we can develop, find we've got talent we didn't know, inner strength. I mean, there's a huge amount that can be discovered in any goal. And of course, it's fine to abandon a goal if it doesn't suit, because I think a lot of people, one of the biggest things that's come into my therapy room in the whole of the years I've been doing this is the not good enough thing. The not good enough is just the worst thing on the whole planet. And if you think you're not good enough, stop thinking it, because it's the worst thing. And actually, when we're children, generally, we don't have a self-concept, and we all try our best. And often the self-concept starts to come in from parents and teachers, unfortunately, who haven't got that awareness. Really, if we haven't got a self-concept, we can give it a go.
Yeah.
Then we can. It doesn't matter if we're not as good as other people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't quite go well. It's but it's
and
then fun.
That's the ultimate reinvention then, isn't it? So to get past, reinvent yourself as good enough, go back to the child who didn't know they weren't good enough or think they were.
Absolutely, that is the ultimate fee. Yeah, sorry.
And then, so, I mean, you will have learned yourself. At some point, did you feel not good enough? And what did you do to make a change?
I never didn't feel not good enough. I felt should do better.
Yeah.
And that was really part of, again, again, we all get it from our influences of childhood. And it's the different children respond to different things differently.
Yeah.
So there can be a child, it was meant with the best intention. My parenting, my dad was like, well, darling, that's great. I came 7th in the London Marathon one year, and he said, well, darling, I don't want to die. I want you to win before I die. Well, I haven't won.
No pressure.
When I got my first international best, he went, well, darling, this is just the beginning. And when I ran my very first big cross-country race, Hampshire, Wiltshire, Dorset, he said, darling, I'm expecting you to win. Yeah. Now, I know, having reviewed it, obviously, and worked on it, that my dad was doing the absolute best intention to encourage the child and tell her that she thought she was amazing. I internalized it as not good enough. Not good enough, sorry, should do better.
Should do better. Therefore, different to not good enough.
Everything I did was okay, but it should be another level. Yeah. And I had to work a lot to free that, because that spoils things, spoils things. Yeah. So I think it's recognizing if we have somewhere where, it just spoils it. Whereas ultimately, I wander around here in Spain chatting, because I notice not many English people do try and talk Spanish. No. But I do. And they all say to me, oh, your Spanish is so good, and well, in Spanish. And then Leticia, who was cleaning my room, said, I like it when someone speaks my language and all this. I'm not good at Spanish, Fee. I'm okay, and I can get by. But I have spent 6 years now, or whenever I ran across Spain in my bare feet when I first learned. So that is, God, that's longer. That's 8 years. Knowing that at some point in my life, I'm going to go the next level. Yeah. But as yet, I haven't done that. Yeah. So every time I come out to Spain this time of year, I come out and they all sound good at Spanish, and I think it's good I'm in a different hotel, because you don't know I'm no better than last year.
Brilliant. But again, another kind of example of, you wouldn't necessarily call it reinventing, but for some people to learn a language at 6 years ago, what would you over? Was that when you first learned?
I was 59 when I ran across Spain, and I recognised that I was going to need to talk some Spanish, because they were interviewing me on the radio and the television, and that speaking Spanish was going to be quite useful. And I was running from the north to the south of Spain, in the land of the people that therefore speak. So my Spanish is okay, but it's by no means. It needs another. Needs focus to go another level. But what I do, and this is a good tip for people, is I don't want to lose the level I've got. Yeah. So because I'm essentially not in Spain, every single day, well, at least 5 out of 7 days, I always start the day and I listen to a YouTube video of Spanish, of some Juan in Mexico, while I do some exercises and, a few press-ups and pull-ups and things. So I think those little routines, I always think the never more than one day off thing works, which means that if I was doing never more than one day off, I'd at least do 3 Spanishes a week. Yeah. But as it is, I end up doing about 5. Yeah. And it means that when I come to Spain, actually, my level hasn't dropped, and I can still speak.
And that's what I think you are. That's why I think of you. And I mean, I might be overusing the term reinvention, but for me, it really means a lot of things. But you're like the master of reinvention. Because I remember when we ran together, when you learnt to write with your left hand.
I'm doing another year. Every so often I do a year of only my left hand. Brilliant. And the last time I did it was 2008. 18, funnily enough.
Wow.
But now I'm doing another year of only my left hand. So this is my left hand to-do list, which is different
I
to
love it.
my right.
That's
And
brilliant.
so it's not, yes, because I think it's good for the brain and it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, the fun thing comes up again. And you kind of got that goal thing. You always set like those daily routines. And I do remember when we were doing the marathons together, because Julia is the reason why I got faster at marathons, because you kind of got me to run slow to run fast. And we did a vision board, like little drawings, and it was simple daily routines. And there was there was no kind of, on the one hand, it was very light and airy, but on the other hand, there was some real discipline there. We were up at 5 o'clock meeting to run, and we took out any excuses, or you helped me to take out excuses and choices. So that there was, to make the thing that I wanted to happen, I had to do some daily practices and be disciplined without feeling I was punishing myself in any way.
I think it's wholesome, isn't it? I think discipline can put the fear of God into a lot of people, but
Yeah,
I think discipline gives us freedom. I really
yeah,
think that if we have some disciplines, we're so free
yeah,
because we feel good in our body, we feel good in ourselves, and also you don't want to make them too big a deal.
yeah,
So therefore, that's why I give myself the 10 minutes Spanish every day because I know I'll do that.
yeah,
I know that I'll listen to 10 minutes, and I've always, I know that at some point I'm going to create some more time for more lessons and things.
yeah,
But it's also knowing what's realistic in our schedule, and because sometimes the goals can be so incongruent because that getting up early thing that we did in Eastbourne worked because we used to meet and we both were doing it, and it does help that support group, as it
yeah.
were. We just head off and we wouldn't not do it, and we had to do it early in part because you had to get back to give breakfast to the
To the
people.
guests, my children and the hotel. I think, what the hell was I doing? But we did it.
And I do agree with you that it's just doing it, and it's also having. I was talking with a client about this kind of thing, and people have an identity of something else, so therefore do you remember somebody said to you they saw me that they had an idea that, no, I know what you were getting super kind of, you weren't drinking or something, and somebody in the town said, oh God, you're becoming like Julia Armstrong, who I was then,
I
because
don't remember, but I wouldn't be surprised at
they
all.
had an image of me as boring
Yeah,
because I was different. They didn't really know me, by the way,
yeah,
but therefore, the identity of someone who's doing lots of disciplines is that they're a boring person.
yeah,
So therefore, that would make it difficult for that person to take those things up,
yeah,
because so we do have to think when we have a goal. We have to think, what is it we want? Why do we want
yeah,
it? Because often the reasons may not really be enough for us to do it.
yeah,
But then who are we when we're doing that thing? If we think that somebody, say we've decided to get up in the morning and exercise and not drink any alcohol or whatever, and we think that that person's a boring person, we're probably not going to do it.
yeah,
Whereas if you have the identity of an energized, fun,
yeah.
more energy, then so that's quite an important thing,
Yes, it
because
is.
I
And actually, it's funny you brought up alcohol, because that is something that you probably, if you've watched any of my socials, see it's on my agenda, and I'm doing the whole not drinking thing. And I've had to really think about how I identify as a non-drinker. It's a different thing. It's not. I've been for 40 years. I've been a socialite, drinky, party animal. So it's kind of having to reinvent my identity as exactly as you said, vibrant. I like it as being a bit of a challenge and in fun,
yeah,
sort of try
it
something
is.
different.
It is very key, I think, because as you know, I'm a non-drinker, and I'm a non-drinker because alcohol's never agreed with me,
Yeah.
and I tried to be a drinker. I think when I was in Eastbourne and we were running together, I think I did have a New Year's resolution 2 years running
Yeah.
to drink more,
I remember.
because I then was still trying to drink a bit of alcohol, and I think I counted I drank 5 drinks in a year or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, but alcohol does seem to be a poison to me, and I think it was a poison to me when I was younger, which meant that when I did overdo it, I was always sick and
Yeah.
falling around. And so for me, ultimately, even trying to drink wasn't worth it because it physically doesn't agree with me. But I don't. People, I know you. I'm saying it here, and I don't drink. I think if you see me socially, nobody would know I wasn't drinking. For instance, brother's 80th recently. They had zero Tanqueray, which I love. So I'm standing there with a gin and tonic as far as anyone's concerned. I never mentioned that I don't drink. I just drink something else.
Yeah.
And I just have a nice time anyway. I think part of it is if we think of our identity as a fun-loving, like people, like conversation, like whatever, but the alcohol doesn't have to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could talk about that for the whole rest of the podcast, but I want to talk about longevity. How long have you got a little bit longer, or
yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I'm fine. I've got a client, but not for. It's only 2:00 here. It's great.
Well,
on we go.
On we go. Well, actually, I will say the thing about the alcohol. It's interesting because for a lot of people, the getting sick and falling over doesn't stop them. For most people, and it certainly didn't stop me. I don't think drink agree with me a lot of the time, but I carried on. I thought, let's keep that disagreement going for 40 years. So that's what I did. But now and I think the thing it brings up is identity. And this is like longevity is a big subject. It's something, in our terms of how we're framing what we're offering in terms of fitness, because what we mean by longevity is what is common sense, really. It's putting life into the years, not just years onto your life. So you kind of want to be like you and fully living until, if that's how things work out for you, and you have a choice to a lot of the time to make that happen. So you are a prime example of someone who just puts life into every year. And how do you do it? How do you help people to not get hung up on the "I'm getting old" story?
I know it's a funny one because it's never been one for me.
Yeah.
I've always thought that life's, for living. And I've always, right from young, looked at women 10, 20 years older than me, interestingly. I naturally did that.
Yeah.
So when I started when I was about 40, I probably didn't bother before then. But when I was 40, I'd look at Sigourney Weaver and, Helen Mirren and whomever, Collins, these people who are properly living, and not just their looks necessarily, but they're in there doing their
energy.
Art.
And,
they're embracing life. And I think essentially it's about, being centered in self, but not self-absorbed. I think unfortunately one of the things that can be really debilitating is self-absorption. And that links with the not good enough thing, because people, when they feel not good enough, they tend to get a bit self-absorbed, because they tend to, and that's no criticism, they tend to feel that everybody's, everything's in relation to them. So therefore they feel that people don't like them, people think this, people think that, it spoils their life. Whereas if we get centered in self, and by that I mean, again, as I said, clearing, and that takes, I'll say that in one sentence, but clearing our wounding, and that can take some work, obviously, but learning to be really fully present in this moment, this actual day, this moment. And you can do that, obviously, as I'm sure you have already been saying, through regular movement, regular breath work, being able to come back to present, learn to be the master of the mind, so it's not looping you in negative narrative. And that can be helped with mantras and breath work, so that you're fully present here and now. And then, of course, you aren't how you see how people are living ahead. They're the ones that are engaged in life with other people. So again, it's then adding value to life, and that can be chatting to someone on the bus. It doesn't mean you have to do some great big thing and be an amazing, person that's influencing loads of people. But if we're centered in ourselves and we're not worrying about ourselves, but we're looking after ourselves with looking after our body, looking after our mind, being, kind of present here and now, then we're available to have the chat with the barista in the coffee shop, or the person on the, or help somebody. Yesterday, poor lady was, the passport we seem to take about a million machines to get through now. And she kept putting her passport on the wrong bit, the fingerprint. And so it's natural to me. we naturally do as humans is if we're not absorbed in ourselves, we're noticing somebody might need a little bit of help and tell them how to do it. And I think then it's enriching because you have an immediate connection with the person you've helped with the passport. And someone helps someone helps you with something you haven't done. And if we're more, then we can go through life really connecting to one another. And I think really that's what humans like. And I think particularly now, I think AI is amazing, by the way, and this whole evolution is incredible. But I think it's going to mean that we need to be more connected as humans to work with it all, and that therefore relationships the most important thing. And I think everybody, again, as you know, I'm work in relationship. I would say everybody wants good relationships. With their children, their friends, with potential partners, and it's one of the areas of the most difficulty. And therefore, the more we're in connection with ourselves, it's easier to have good relationships. And life's always fun. And I'm very fortunate in that I have a client base of 22 to 91 actually, but my main people I see are between kind of 22 and middle to late 40s. And then I've obviously got 50s, 60s, a 70, a 90, but spending my days really with people who are trying to progress their life. And that's what people often are doing up till they're 50 or so, and then they often stop.
That's it.
They kind of stop down.
It's even like people stop. I really love everything you said there. I will repeat it and then I'll come on to what I was thinking, which is, that you were saying that connection is really the key of like happiness, and you can't connect with other people if you're still stuck in your own stuff. That whole not good enough thing comes from and leads you then to be more stuck in your stuff. And it's never really going to be too late to get out of that. If you're 60 or 70 or 80 and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling stuck and it happens to me and, it's always been like this, it might be harder, but you still can. And sometimes starting to look after yourself through going for a walk or moving or eating something nice is how you do that. It's just all simple steps. But I really hear what you're saying about that self-absorbed thing is what leads to, things, you say stuck in an identity that feels rubbish. And I completely forgot, what was it you said at the end there? Because I was thinking about something came to my mind to say, but it will come back to me. There's something you said.
But the younger people are thinking, well, this is that stage of life, so I'm going for it. And often people sometimes in their 50s, 60s start to wind down. And I don't know, there's no need to wind down.
No, and actually, I'll tell you what I was thinking in the context of where you live and how you approach living in houses and flats and moving and travelling and nomading. And the thing I don't want ever to happen to me is to stop thinking I can redecorate and clear everything out and move somewhere else or let the flat out. And I think sometimes the people just get stuck and they stop redecorating and they stop changing things in their house. And then where I live in this block, we've got lots of young families, and I absolutely love it because it's energy in the house, and it means that we're kind of constantly thinking, let's fix that roof or whatever. Whereas I think
they did that experiment, didn't they? With I think it was four guys or something. They were in their 70s. Oh no, were they? I can't remember how
yes, say it. That was
brilliant. They put them in their house, and then they played the music and everything of 20 years before. And then they all started livening up. Because I do think then what do they say? Environment wins over will. Now, I actually think that obviously if we're really doing inner work, then we will naturally change our environment because we won't want to be around the people or the environments or the places that the vibe isn't resonant. But actually, if you stick yourself in an environment and you're going to be affected by it. So therefore if you're around. So if I were to go and put myself in a retirement home,
you'd have to sleep with all the men, Jew, and make it a bit more exciting. Wake them up, come on, boys. I think that would be the only thing, get them running.
Because the thing is, actually, funny enough, my clients, quite a few of them, quite often, the people who are, some of them aren't aware of my age or anything, but a few of them will say to me, "You're not going to retire, are you?"
Yeah.
And then I've had a client had a baby recently, and she's second generation client because I work with her parents who are my sort of age,
Yeah.
and she's in her 30s, and she said, "Oh, but I want you to work with my baby." I won't say. And I thought, the baby at the moment's 4 months old.
Well, I mean, in 30 years, they might need some help.
Why
Yeah.
not? Exactly.
What was
Absolutely.
it?
Why not?
What was the James Dean quote? Dream.
It's yeah, exactly. Dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die today. And
Yeah.
why not? Why wouldn't I be still keen to help the baby if he wants help? He may not want any help, but when I'm not.
And do you know what? We might, with the dream as if you live forever. I mean, a lot of people could live forever accidentally because of the way biohacking and AI we could be reproduced in another version of ourselves. But you can never close your mind to and think this is the end and whatever. Julie, this is me and you could just keep talking for hours and hours. I think, or I could listen to you talking and hearing, because I think there's a shared love of life and energy. I think we're lucky we both got energy. It's there's a sort of movement now amongst people in their 50 plus not to lie down and die, and not to and talking about inspiring older people. I don't know if you heard when I was on the Chris Evans moment. I had my brief moment on Chris Evans' show, and he talked about Rod Stewart wanted to win the 100 meters at 80, and he's and touring, and I've frozen there, and touring, and all these. There's lots and lots of role models for people who are over 50, over 60 to keep moving forward. And to keep changing. Would you say to somebody who came to you, say 75, and said, "Look, I've never been happy. I've got these childhood issues. I can't change myself." How would you tackle them?
I have my 91-year-old client was that person.
Wow.
And she transformed her life, and she completely transformed her life. And, absolutely. So I would say exactly what I'd say to someone of 35. It's no different what people bring in.
Yeah.
And if people are prepared to do the work, I always say there is some work to be done.
Yeah.
But if people are prepared to do it, and we can, we're limitless beings.
Yeah.
And as we're limitless beings receiving from a limitless source, actually. We've got limitless potential, so we can do anything.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a good way to end the podcast on reinvention, to remember we're limitless beings, and at 91 you can make a change, at 21 you can make a change, but start from within.
Very good. I love it. Love talking to you, Fiona.
Thanks. One final thing, Jo. If people wanted to find you, see what you're up to, is there any way you'd like them to go, or do you just listen and...
I'm very busy, so perhaps don't find me. No, I'm joking.
Absolutely fine. Look, you've got. I can put whatever you want at the bottom of the podcast. We don't need to do that if you want.
No, I'm very happy. JuliaKaiTaylor.com. I mean, and also, JuliaKaiTaylor.com.
Lovely, perfect. I'm good. Well, that was lovely. Thank you so much, and I will. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Loved it.